Hi, it's Gene, retired in Mexico, and I'm here with my friend. Everything's reversed here. I'm here with my friend, um, Professor Gumbo from Phoenix, Arizona, and we've been counting down albums. We started with 1970, and now we're on the year 1981. So we're rolling right along. If you're watching, we really appreciate it. We are high school friends. 52 years we've known each other. The professor was my mentor, and now we're catching up on our musical tastes all these years later. So thanks for joining us. I'm on Instagram, Patreon, Facebook, all over the place. So all the links are up above, and we appreciate it. Also, hit that like, subscribe button. And also, this countdown, we're going to be doing a playlist that will be associated with this. And you can also look down below, and we'll have the Spotify playlist for two songs from every album that we're picking. So we just logged on. How you doing, Professor?
I'm doing well for an old man.
Yeah, we both had old man things yesterday, didn't we?
Yep. Yep.
Mine was the dentist. Yeah, so I don't know if I want to admit this to the viewers, but I had a dental fixture that fractured, that broke. So we rescheduled this from Tuesday to Wednesday because I thought it was better if I had a full set of teeth. How's that for old man stuff?
That sounds good to me. My ailments were leisure, but primarily I think my main thing is that I had my head up my ass.
Oh, okay. And is that
And
unusual?
no, no, it's par for the course these days.
And am I seeing a George Orwell forehead?
You are. George Orwell. I told you so.
Oh, perfect. I think he
Very,
was more. Oh, go ahead.
very good of you to notice that.
I think I've realized over the years now, I think he was more right about double speak than Big Brother.
About what?
Versus Big Brother, double speak versus Big
Oh,
Brother.
yes, yes. Uh-huh.
I'll give him the nod on double speak. I think he was more on the mark there. What do you think?
I think that he was right about that. Uh, I think he was right in that if we're not careful, we're going to be controlled. If we relinquish control, it will be taken from us, and we won't give it to him. However, I taught for a number of times 1984, but I also taught uh, Aldous Huxley's Brave New World,
Yeah.
and I think Huxley was more correct than Orwell. He wrote to Orwell and he said, he said 1984 was a really good book, but he said, I want to differ with you that most people will not be controlled by being forced. They'll be controlled by being manipulated, by make them believe that they're happy and they'll do anything for you.
Right. Yeah. So
And
I am into a lot into Byung-Chul Han and Michel Foucault, who believe that we are living in a digital panopticon where freedom, the manipulation looks like freedom, tastes like freedom, feels like freedom, but it's really not freedom.
Huxley would have agreed with that completely.
All right, so 1981. Before I ask you about the year, let me just run down some events because I like to put this into context. Um, and I can go through this quickly. So, Iran released 52 American hostages minutes after Ronald Reagan was sworn in. How's that for corruption?
Yep,
But
there you
also
go.
good news. What's that?
I said, there you go. No surprises.
Yeah, and Bobby Sands went on a hunger strike in Ireland. About 7 weeks later, he died of hunger. Augusto Pinochet was sworn in president of Chile. That had some consequences. There were a bunch of assassinations and attempted assassinations. I mean, Bangladesh had an assassination. Anwar Sadat was assassinated in Egypt, and then John Hinckley shot Ronald Reagan and James Brady, but he wounded them. So, yeah, there's a lot going on there. But on maybe happier news. Sandra Day O'Connor became the first woman nominated to the U.S. Supreme Court. So that's a big year. Um, Also, the first test tube baby, Elizabeth Jordan Carr, was born. 750 million people, if you can believe that, watched the wedding of Lady Diana Spencer to that guy. What's his name? That guy, that English guy.
Yeah, the
Anyway,
English.
yeah, she married him. And then on a sadder note, we had the first recognized cases of AIDS. So that really dominated the 80s, didn't it? Remember, a lot of things happened in regards to that, music related. And then the big news in music, MTV debuted
My MTV.
The Buggles, Video Kills the Radio Star. Can you sing that one?
Video kill the radio star.
Yeah,
Video kill the radio star.
exactly. Deaths, we had some big ones. I only mentioned three here, but Bob Marley died in 1981. Bill Haley, one of the original rock and rollers, and Harry Chapin went down in that plane. And then the top films of the year, I just picked three, but Raiders of the Lost Ark, On Golden Pond, and Chariots of Fire. That bring back
Doom,
some
doom,
memories?
doom, doom, doom. Doom, 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 doom. Doom, 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 doom. Yeah, I can even do the Vangelis tune for Chariots of Fire.
Yeah, that's great. So I'm going to start. And we've talked over the years about 1981, whether it's a weak year or a strong year. I used to think it was a weak year. I kind of changed my mind. Now I've changed my mind again. I think it's a weak year. What do you think?
I think it's an odd year. Okay. I think that it's a year where people that I would have expected to make a great album did not. Okay. And then and there were some oddball albums that I really like from there. And actually, as I was choosing the top 10 and plus five, so 15, I ended up having to toss out some people that I really wanted to put in there, like the Gun Club and uh, Motorhead and some things like that. Particularly the Gun Club. That was sad that I would have to take that out, but I just there was nothing else to do about it. Not to keep it at 15.
Okay. Is this the year that Motorhead did the Hammersmith
Yeah,
concert?
No Sleep Till Hammersmith.
I didn't play that for this. I do like that. That's my favorite Motorhead. I don't
Right.
think it
Well,
would have,
Lemmy and his one note range.
yeah, I don't think it would have made my, I
I
don't think it
love
would
the
have
line when
made,
he says, I don't
I
want
don't
to
think it
live
would,
forever.
oh, we're talking over each other a little bit. Yeah. But I don't think it would have made my top 15 anyway, but I was going to play that for this project. Well, anyway, my number 10, I'm going to start. Going to be a surprise right off the bat, but I said it was a weak year. So sitting down, you're going to be really surprised by this.
I'm sitting
Rocky
down on
Erickson.
my
What's that?
sitting down on my hemorrhoid supporting seat.
Oh, yeah. Okay. Enough about old guys talking about their problems. All right. Rocky Erickson and the Aliens, the evil one. Now, I like this pick because it's one of those outsider musicians that I like. Another musician who started in 1981 with a debut handing out his cassettes from a McDonald's in Austin was Daniel Johnston. I'm a big fan. He put out a cassette that's now, you can now listen to it on Spotify. It's called Songs of Pain. And, I like this. Jonathan Richman, all these kind of outsider artists. And Rocky Erickson's one of my favorites. So he was in the 13th floor elevators in the 1960s. In, I think, Dallas, Texas. And there was another band called the Moving Sidewalks. They renamed themselves ZZ Top. So, we're talking about Texas, but then he gets arrested for drug possession. They don't exactly send him to jail. They kind of send him to this treatment facility or something. And then he gets released from there. I've watched the documentary on him. It's really interesting. And he comes out of the asylum or treatment facility a little bit changed. And this album is just all full of his obsession for like 1950s sci-fi movies and all this kind of thing. He has a song called The Creature with the Atom Brain. Doesn't that sound like some Saturday morning thing? Remember, did you ever remember, Professor, on Saturday mornings on KPHO? They had a show that Stu Tracy hosted called The World Beyond
The
Yawn.
world beyond.
And this would be like something right out of that, which reminds me of Count Floyd from SCTV. But anyhow, I digress. I am cheating a little bit here because actually this album was released twice. It was released in 1980 with one song lineup, and then in 1981 with a slightly different track listing. So one was Europe, one was stateside. They were on different record labels. So, what year? Well, I picked two songs, and the two songs I picked are actually from each album, the 1980 and the 1981 album. So I'm kind of cheating a little bit, but now in hindsight, they've released everything as one disc with all 13 tracks on Spotify. So I'm like, okay, it doesn't make any difference. And by the way, the producer on this, I didn't know who the producer was. Any guesses?
No, I don't. And I'm a huge fan of Rocky Erickson, but no.
Stu Cook
Oh, okay.
from Creedence. Now, he was the bass player, right?
Yep, he was.
And Doug Clifford was the drummer?
Yes.
Okay. So I really like all the songs on here. So I thought you were a Rocky Erickson fan. So here's my two picks: Two-Headed Dog, Red Temple Prayer, which was strangely omitted from the 1981 re-release. But you got to go with Two-Headed Dog. And then I kind of like a song called A Cold Night for Alligators. So that's my number 10 pick, The Evil One by Rocky Erickson.
That's a great album. I love Rocky. He's not on my list because I have him covered with a two-disc, uh, 40-some track anthology called I Have Always Been Here Before. And it
Right.
has pretty much everything of note. Plus, the way I really got into Rocky was in the tribute album to him, where the pyramid meets the eye. And so, like it has ZZ Top doing Reverberation, and it's got Julian Cope doing I Have Always Been Here Before. And as those tribute albums are concerned, it's one of the absolute best. As a matter of fact, what I did was I liked it so much that once I got the Rocky compilation, I took all the songs and put them in the same order as the Where the Pyramid Meets the Eye, so I could listen to covers and then listen to Rocky doing them.
Oh, okay. So you're up
Yeah,
next.
he was an amazing person. So
Yeah,
if
rest in
anyone
peace.
wonders, um, the reason he's not on mine is because I have him covered on anthologies. All right, this next one is a band that I was familiar with from the beginning, but I've only become more familiar. I've only become more fond of them as time has gone on, and that is David Sylvian's band Japan.
Uh,
David Sylvian, Mick Karn. Um, and when I first heard them, I thought, okay, they're kind of Roxy Music derivative. But the more I listened to them, the more I realized that David Sylvian was a distinctive voice of his own. Okay. Yes, he sounds kind of like Brian Ferry, but it's very different. And Tin Drum is probably the best single Japan album. There is a kind of, they're not really, they seemed to be a new wave band, but they were more of an art band. And Sylvian did things with Robert Fripp and with Bill Nelson and others. Um, and probably my favorite thing by him came a couple of years later when he did a song called Forbidden Colors with Ryuichi Sakamoto from Yellow Magic Orchestra. And it's just a beautiful, beautiful song. If you can imagine um, David Bowie without the without any of the commercialism, that's sort of, David Sylvian. Um, and he was a beautiful man too. I mean, he still is interesting looking, but I mean, he was striking, during that time. But the two songs, every song on here is good, but the two songs from Tin Drum that I like the most are "The Art of Parties"
Uh-huh.
and "Ghosts."
Yeah, I'm with you
You'll probably
100%. Great pick. Yeah, and I'm glad you mentioned anthologies because I was wondering when maybe to insert that in one of our videos. I mentioned Daniel Johnston. He has a compilation of 20 songs, I think it is, called Welcome to My World. That was released, I think, in the late 80s. And if we were doing anthologies or compilations, if that was fair territory, he'd probably be on my future list in a heartbeat. Uh, but as it is, I won't have any of his albums on any of my countdowns because I like this anthology so much. So exactly what you said about Rocky. All right, number 9 for me. Let's see what it is. I forget what it is. Ah, okay, an underrated album, I think. Someone we've talked about, but Tom Petty and Heartbreakers, Hard Promises. It's produced by Jimmy Iovine again. It's great. Is it as good as Damned Torpedoes? Not quite, not quite, but it's a good 4.5 star album, and it's got a lot of good stuff on it. Now, this was the same year that Stevie Nicks put out Belladonna, and that has Stop Dragging My Heart Around. If that song had been on here, yeah, it would be great. But instead, there's a song called Insider. That's his duet with Stevie Nicks. It's not as good as Stop Dragging My Heart Around, but I think it's still a great album. I love it, and I'm going with the first. I think they're the first two songs. The Waiting, yeah, The Waiting is the hardest part. Love that song, and then A Woman in Love. It's Not Me. Yeah, she'd let the little things go. Yeah, it's just a great song. But the whole album's good. But it really starts off with a strong 1-2 punch. Um, I love it. Nothing more to say about it. Tom Petty, Hard Promises.
that's another fine album. My number 9 is a an artist I became familiar with, actually a song from this album, um, at your house or at your apartment. Uh,
Hmm.
I was helping you move and you had the radio on, and it came on, and I thought, well, this guy is like, he's cool. He's clearly Irish, kind of influenced by Van Morrison. It's Paul Brady. Now,
Ah,
Paul Brady had been around for a long time as an Irish folk musician. Um, and he started taking a more rock turn in the late 70s and early 80s. And the album that I got really into was Hard Station. Um, and he was a songwriter also. He wrote some songs for Tina Turner. And
oh, that's right.
yeah. And so but great singer, uh, great guitarist, and he's one of those people, a Irish folk rocker. And the album Hard Station, I got it as soon as, I mean, like the next day after I found out who that was. And the song from it that it's my favorite song by him, although I have to say his version of uh Lakes of Pontchartrain is really great, but it's his own song, Nothing But the Same Old Story, which is an angry, rebellious song. And that's the song they were playing on the radio when I was at your place. So Nothing But the Same Old Story. And the other one is Hard Station, the title track.
Good pick. Yeah, that one surprises me, but I knew you liked Paul Brady. But great. Well, that'll make for a great playlist for sure when we put that together. So my number eight, I'm going back to Elvis Costello and the Attractions. Trust, an album I like a lot. I seem to like it a little less than the critics, but I still love it. It's a good 4.5 star album to me, produced by Nick Lowe and Roger Beshir- Becherian, French or something, or Italian. I don't know. I can't. What's that?
I
I
don't
don't
know.
know how to pronounce his name, but um, excellently produced. That's why I mentioned the producers. Yeah, I don't, in listening to this, I've always liked the album, but in listening to it for this project, I liked it a little bit more. And I picked a song that kind of jumped out at me this time. I knew I liked New Lace Sleeves, so that's one of my two picks is New Lace Sleeves. You look so pretty in your new lace sleeves. I think that's the song where he says good manners and bad breath. How's that
Yes,
one?
get you there.
Yeah, get you nowhere. The other song, I'm surprised I picked this, but man, it really jumped out at me. There is a duet with Chris Difford from Squeeze called From a Whisper to a Scream.
Hmm.
That just sounded really great when I was doing this project. So I'm going to pick those two songs. But I think there's enough written about Elvis Costello. People know enough about him that I don't really need to go on and expound. So if you don't know Elvis Costello, check him out.
He did two albums that year, um, Almost Blue and Crust.
Right.
So, uh, yeah, I've been a huge Elvis Costello fan almost from the first album, actually from the first album. And and I'll talk a little bit more about this when I talk about Trust. What makes it a little different from his previous work. All right, my number eight. You might be surprised that this is on here. And let me just point out to you and to your listeners that if the two songs that I chose were representative of the entire album, this would be right up in the number one or two spot. Okay. But they're not. These two songs are amazing songs on an otherwise lackluster album. And that album is Bob Dylan's Shot of Love. It's one of the trilogy of, hey, I love Jesus and you have to too, or you're going to hell. Um, but there are two songs on there that are just absolutely beautiful. They are indispensable for me on any Bob Dylan compilation that I make, and you probably can guess what they are. Groom Still Waiting at the Altar,
Okay.
a real rocker, west of the Jordan, east of the Rock of Gibraltar. It's a turning of the page. It's the dawning of the new age. A groom still waiting at the altar. And the other one is just one of the most beautiful ballads Dylan ever wrote. Later to be done in a even perhaps more beautiful version by Emmylou Harris, but it's the song is "Every Grain of Sand,"
Uh-huh.
which I think we talked about that when we did the Dylan thing, and it's a nod to William Blake, but it's a great song. So Groom Still Waiting at the Altar, a rocker and a ballad, a beautiful ballad, Every Grain of Sand from Bob Dylan's Shot of Love.
Those are those are great songs. Can't argue. Yeah, I didn't know if Dylan was going to make your list or not, so that's great. Um, and I like what you said. I'm going to have that problem next year when we do 82, as I've got some albums which have songs on them that are so special to me that I want to put the album on my list. But maybe I'm not a fan of every single song, so it's tough. if you're making a playlist, you want to get some good songs on there. Well, number
The
seven, I think this will
Before we
surprise
go
you.
on, I should point out also Dylan made one other. He also that's the year he released Biograph.
Oh, the anthology, yeah.
Yeah, the anthology Biograph.
Yeah, I still have it. It's up in my closet. Um, Number seven, I know you didn't see this one coming. Um, the debut album by the Blasters.
Okay, I
I
knew you liked.
Yeah, this first one, their sophomore album was really good too, but this first one, this one is so good that it's almost hard to pick two songs from it. So, who are the Blasters? Well, they were on Slash Records, which was an independent label, and they were great. There were a few independent labels. I think people today know labels like Sub Pop or or what's that one? Aviistic Kitty, Asthmatic Kitty, that's it. And some of these labels, but back in the day, it was in the 80s, SST was very dominant. But right before that, you had this period with Slash. Slash was a great record label. Oh my God. I love so many people on the first couple 3 years of Slash Records. And the Blasters did retro rock. They did this 1950s style rock and roll, but they updated it for the 80s and it worked. Great piano player. The brothers, Phil and Dave Alvin, one on vocals and rhythm guitar, the other on lead guitar. And I'm a sucker for the Blasters. Many, many great songs on this album. But the ones I'm going with, I mean, it kicks off with a song called Marie Marie, which is just great. Um, but I'm going with Border Radio, a song about the AM stations that would blast right over on the Mexican side of they would put these towers on the border and blast music all over the United States because they didn't have to conform to the FCC regulations. So 50,000 watts out of Mexico. This is the Border Radio. Great song. And then American music. Yeah. Just almost an, I don't know, just you have to hear it. Great song, American music. We'll have it on the playlist. The Blasters, the Blasters. That's
All
it.
right, my number seven is a band that for a while when we were in high school was my number one band. And then there was a major change when the lead singer quit and the drummer took over as the lead singer. And I continued to like them. Uh, but sort of became law of diminishing returns. With each album, they were a little bit less impressive. But this is Genesis. And at this point, they were still making some strong music, although a lot of people really cut this album down. I like it, and it is Abacab.
Mhm.
Um, and it's not it's not Phil Collins. It's Phil Collins and Tony Banks and Mike Rutherford. Okay,
Yeah.
um, and the two songs I chose are very much band songs. One of them is the title track, Abacab, which is a real up tempo rocker and a prog rocker. And then the next is probably the proggiest thing they were still to do at that point. And that was Dodo Lurker.
Mm.
And I love Dodo Lurker. When I heard that, I said, yeah, this could almost have been with Peter Gabriel, Dodo Lurker. Um, and so Phil Collins knew his place at this time. He hadn't started to put forward his personality quite as much yet. And it's still a very enjoyable album for anybody who ever liked Genesis. That is Abacab with Abacab and Dodo Lurker.
Excellent. Yeah, and I'll have some comments on that later. My number six, gonna go with another album on Slash Records. I told you I loved that label. And that's the band X from Los
Mm-hmm.
Angeles. But this is not the album Los Angeles. This is their sophomore effort, Wild Gift, also produced by Ray. I've always called him Ray Manzarek, but it might be Ray Manzarek. But he's from the Doors. Do you know how to pronounce his name?
I've always said Manzarek, but
Yeah. I read his biography, by the way.
yeah.
And boy, does he have a beef against Oliver Stone. Woo! Oliver Stone, of course, made the movie The Doors, and rest in peace. Ray has left us, but he said Oliver Stone lied to the band. So anyway, I digress. Another great collection, almost as good as the debut. Wild Gift's a great album, and no sophomore slump here. And my two, this is the California punk band, not quite a hardcore band, more of a punk, but kind of part of that California hardcore scene. And I'm going to pick the songs Universal Corner and White Girl. So number 6, X, Wild Gift.
Uh, I actually had this in my top 15, but it was one of the ones I had to drop out. I know you like them more than I do, but I do like them a lot. And I have this album on a disc with Los Angeles, the two of them together. They're on a
Hi,
twofer.
Wendell.
This is my cat Wendell. Let's see if you can see him there. Wendell, look. Oh, isn't he a handsome boy?
Yep.
Um, so it's funny. He's such a good, well-behaved boy, never runs away. But at night, when it's really dark outside, and if I have to let Lorna in and she hesitates, he'll run out onto the porch. And then he leads me on a merry chase. He keeps running away from me until I get as far from the door as possible, and then he'll zoom back into the house again. Uh, and then when I pick him up, he goes, um, but he never means to run away. He just means to mess with me.
Yep.
Okay, so but I was saying that Los Angeles and Wild Gift are a twofer when those were kind of popular for a while, and because they're both fairly short albums, they fit in their entirety on a single disc. All right, my number 6. This might surprise you. Um, it kind of it continues to surprise me because by this time, I Elton John was somebody that I kind of, okay, I've always liked Elton John and I'm always going to continue to. But in the 70s, especially the early 70s, Elton John was so cool. But in 1981, he released a really classy album called The Fox. And it's a great album, has great songs on it, great singing. And it's like he was plateauing and then whoop, he went up, for a while. And almost every song is great on there, including the title track, The Fox. But I would choose the rocker, the galloping rocker, Nobody Wins. They must have loved each other once, but that was many years ago. And in the end, nobody wins. But then what wins this album for me is a trilogy of songs that go together. Carla Etude, which is an instrumental, followed by Fanfare, which is also an instrumental. This is sort of like Funeral for a Friend, Love Lies Bleeding. But then the third part is Chloe. And Chloe, what you gonna do about me? And it's just one of Elton's best vocals after his golden years. So
Huh.
that's the Fox with Nobody Wins, Carla Etude, Fanfare, Chloe.
Yeah, who was the lyricist on that album?
Uh, that was Guy Osborne, I think, on some of the songs, but I think some of them are also Bernie Taupin. I think he was. I'm not sure. I think Guy Osborne definitely wrote some of them.
Well, I was thinking it was two lyricists. That's what I was thinking.
That might have been the case, yes.
I think you're probably right about that. Yeah, good old Elton John. So that'll sound great on the playlist. My number five. Well, I've said enough about Slash Records. No, I haven't. I got one more Slash Records album. Or at least I think it was released on Slash. It might have been released on more than one label, but this is the Gun Club, Fire of Love. And
Ah, yes, yes.
I love their debut. And it was produced by a guy named Chris D, who did some other productions that were great as well. It was actually co-produced. Tito Lariva was the other one, but I think Chris D was dominant. And yeah, I love the first two or three Gun Club albums. They're great. And so for here, I'm going to go with. So if you don't know the Gun Club, for those viewers who go, well, who's the Gun Club? This was a band led by Jeffrey Lee Pierce from Texas. I believe he was a Texan. And he combined punk and the blues. So it's a punk album, but it has slide guitar on it. And it has a lot of blues tropes on it. Shouldn't go together, but he pulled it off. He had this vision. And they're very unique, very unique. So I'm going to go with Sex Beat, which is not particularly that bluesy. But then I'm going to go with the cover, Preaching the Blues, the Robert Johnson song, uh, where you can really hear that punk and blues blending. But yeah, just his yelps and his hollers, the way he merged punk and blues was quite ingenious. And I love these first couple albums. Yeah, up through their third album, I think was Miami. But yeah, Sex Beat and Preaching the Blues, the Gun Club.
Chris D, by the way, was had a band called Divine Horsemen,
Right.
and yeah, and they were quite good also. Um, okay, so the next one, I know you're going to have this on here just higher than me. My number five, Black Uhuru, Red. And you know, you mentioned that in 1981 Bob Marley died, and there was a huge gap left, a hole left. Like who was going to be the next Bob Marley? Bottom line is there would not be a next Bob Marley any more than there would be a next Bob Dylan if Bob Dylan were to die. But you know, there were at least some contenders for the throne, and one of the strongest contenders for the throne was the trio Black Uhuru. And they had a number of albums, but Red is my favorite by them. And there's the two songs that stand out immediately for me are Youth of Eglinton and Spongy Reggae. But you know, Michael Rose, lead singer, has a voice very similar to Bob Marley. But I said that they were a trio, but the fact is that they were actually a five piece because Sly and Robbie on, you know, the rhythm, Sly Dunbar and Robbie, what was
Shakespeare.
Robbie's last name? Yeah. But they made the sound of Black Uhuru also. Black Uhuru was three singers with Sly and Robbie on rhythm section, and very very powerful uh, reggae album. If Bob Marley had never come around, they might have even been stronger because this album would have really stuck out.
Well, I'm glad to see that on there. So, I mean, you're right. I do like that album. Um, wow. So I actually wouldn't have predicted that would make your top 10. So I'm pretty pleased. And perfect song choices. Yeah, you know, on Wikipedia, they say that Black Uhuru is the trio and Sly and Robbie are guest musicians, but they produced it.
Right.
They're the brains behind it. So funny how they just played with the billing on that. But I consider them to be a five piece at minimum. And then if you include the guitar and keyboard player, there's yeah. But anyway, you're right. Very interesting. So my number, what am I on? Number four. Well, I think this will surprise you that I have this as high as I do, because I may not be talking about this band again. In fact, I probably won't. I don't think they're going to make any of my future lists, but this is Rush with Moving Pictures. I love this album. It's my favorite Rush album, and I think it's a masterpiece. I think it's a five-star album. Uh, I don't need to talk about it. Everybody knows Rush is one of the biggest viral bands on YouTube. Neil Peart considered master drummer, rest in peace. Yeah, the only thing to say about it is that there are people who they eschew this kind of commercial period, but I think that's a bunch of crap. But I mean, if that's your opinion, that's fine. But for me, what's wrong with commercial? What's wrong with some good melodies and pop riffs? I love moving pictures, and I'm going to go with the two obvious songs: Tom Sawyer, which is my favorite Rush song, and Limelight. They're just great songs. Yeah, this whole album is really, really good. Five-star album, Rush, Moving Pictures.
Great choice. And it's exactly my choice for my number four as well. It's
Wow.
everything you said about it is true for me also. My favorite Rush album. It's the album that really got me into Rush. I'd been familiar with their earlier stuff, but Moving Pictures is such a great album. There is a once they started getting a little bit commercial, there are echoes of the Police in there. It's like if the Police were more prog,
Uh-huh.
that but the other thing is I'm glad I chose two different songs because now we'll have three songs on there. The two that I put on there are Tom Sawyer, of course, and Red Barchetta.
Okay. Yeah, great pick. Wow. Okay. Well, um, yeah, I think the only surprise there comes from my end that I would have it at number four. So,
And the first time, or was it the first time I saw Rush? Yeah, the first time I saw Rush in concert with EJ, they were touring on a anniversary for Moving Pictures, and so they did the entire album from beginning to end.
oh man. Yeah, you got to see I mean they're all equally talented, but you got to see Pert because he's gone
Right.
now. So, wow. And now they're going to have a woman drummer, huh?
I'd heard that. Yeah, yeah.
That's a smart move because she's probably super talented and it will deflect some of the comparisons about, you know. So, okay, my number three is Black Uhuru, Red. I agree with you. It's a great album. I picked the same two songs, so I'm going to have to pick another one. I'm thinking, even though it's a short song, I'm thinking of picking Utterance.
That's a good one.
But I could also go with um, I would also consider, let me pull this up again. I would consider Poof She Poof or Carbine. Do
Is
you
it
have any
Poof She Poof?
preference?
I thought it was Puff She Puff.
Yeah, but
But
she
you're
says, she sings Poof.
yeah, that's true. She does. So
I'm just pronouncing it like she
yeah,
does.
right.
Puma Jones pronounces it Poof, like her name, Puma.
Yeah, Puma.
And so, do you have a preference on any of those songs?
Poof She Poof would have been my third choice.
Okay, let's go with that one because I like that one just as well. So we'll add that. But Yeah, one of the tightest rhythm sections. I talk about that all the time, and they're so the bass and drum is is they have nicknames. So Robbie Shakespeare is often called Robbie Bass Spear, and Slide Dunbar is often called Slide Drumbar. So it's just a funny pun with their names. But I had the pleasure to see them in concert, and Sly has these little sin pads, little hexagonal, and when he hits those, I don't know if the Michael picked this up, but it kind of goes like this. It goes. It just makes this real like a gunshot, you know? And it's so cool, these little sin pads that he has. And they're like, he's like a metronome, man. And then when you listen to Robbie's bass, it's some of the most complicated and yet perfect bass. And he's played, you were talking about Bob Dylan. He played on Infidels. So
Right.
Robbie Shakespeare has, rest in peace, who we lost last year, is a premier bass player. I mean, he's one of the best, and that's why he's done a lot of session work. They've produced Grace Jones and a bunch of other people, and I love I love this debut by, well, it wasn't the debut, it was the debut with Michael Rose. So love Black Uhuru, number three pick.
Okay, my number three is a person who I got to meet for a short period of time, and apparently it left a little bit of an impression, or he's just a really sweetheart of a guy. Um, some years after 1981, this would have been many years later, but and you were at this concert with me, Gene. We went to see Peter Hamill at the Rhythm Room. And I got there early because I left from work from school, and I was standing. I was like the first person standing out at the back, and a little bus drives up, and Peter Hamill gets out, and he comes up to me and he says, "Excuse me, do you know where I get in?" And I said, "Yeah, the entrance for the band is up at the front by the street." He goes, "Oh, thanks a lot. I appreciate it." I said, "I'm looking forward to the show," and he said, "So am I." So, and then we talked a little bit afterwards, just for a short bit. But here's what makes me tell you he's such a sweetheart. A couple of years after that, Hamill put out an album called Piano GTR VOX. And it was a box set of him solo, live, doing just dozens of his songs. Trying to remember how many discs there were on it, but there were quite a few. It was like, at least a dozen discs. Well, I heard about it, and so I tried to order it through Sofa Sound, his record company, but they were out. And I had actually emailed him earlier after the show and telling him what a great show it was. And he told me that he really appreciated, hearing that. So now I said, "Hey, remember me? I'm the guy that was standing out there all by himself when you came out there." Well, I really wanted to get this album, and I tried to order it and it wasn't available. And I was just wondering if you could direct me towards somebody who is still selling it. And I emailed him that. And about, I'd say, a month later, I get a package in the mail, and it's the entire box. And it said, "Jim, enjoy." And then PH, Peter Hamill. He sent me a copy of it for free, And so, that how many artists would do that? It's like, but so I just wanted to mention that because it's made me fond of Peter Hamill ever since. Um, Interesting guy. His real instrument is the vocals. I mean, he can play guitar, he can play piano, but the guy in early years of Vandergraaf Generator, one at least one critic said he does with his voice what Jimi Hendrix could do with a guitar. Um, and he's a great lyricist. Some people say he's the Bob Dylan of prog, very existential lyricist. This is surprisingly a very one of his more commercial albums, and it is Sitting Targets. If somebody once is interested in Peter Hammill and they want to get into Peter Hammill, this is a great way to get into him because it's not super commercial, but it's accessible.
Yeah.
And that's what it's accessible. And so, I mean, every song on it is good, but there's two songs on it that they go right together. One of them is Sitting Targets, which is kind of interesting because it's about how, you know, one of the most dangerous things that we as humans can do is get in a car and drive. I mean, statistically, we're insane to do that. And so we're sitting targets in a car. I've been thinking about it. It's not too far to drive. But then Stranger Still is the follow up, to it. This I'm right after Sitting Targets is Stranger Still, and the I love when he says, "I've learned how to behave in the restaurant now. I don't tear at the meat with my hands. If I've become a man of the world, somehow it's not to say I'm a worldly man."
Uh-huh.
Um, and so, great lyrics there. So Sitting Targets and Stranger Still from Peter Hamill's Sitting Targets.
Wow. Yeah, that's a great album. I agree. And that was a great show. I knew part of that story. I don't think I knew the part where you were talking to him outside. I knew about you receiving the package, but I don't think I knew that you had talked to him. You must have told me at the time. You must have, but I've since forgotten.
I think part of the reason that he sent it to me is because I said, my wife wants to get this for me for my birthday, but we can't find it anywhere. So,
And
yeah.
by the way, I think I've told you this before, and I'm digressing. Viewers hang tight with me, but like, why would I move to Mexico? Well, one reason that I moved from Phoenix, Arizona was in 2017. I had three different friends and acquaintances um, that were killed by cars in separate accidents. That should not statistically happen, but there was a member of my congregation, single mother of four kids, riding her bike, was hit by a commercial vehicle. Another member of that congregation was 31-year-old man making a left-hand turn at an intersection on his motorcycle and got hit by a red light runner. And one of the cigar store owners in town, a Korean man, just went to the airport to pick up his friend and was hit by a wrong way driver on the freeway on the Black Canyon there. And I said, I got to get out of here. I mean, it really affected me. It affected me deeply. The irony is that I drove 2,000 miles to get away. That's very ironic. And I brought my car here, but I rarely use it. I've driven 1 or 2 miles this week, and there's public transportation here, and I'm really quite serious about that. And then I remember when you were rear-ended, and you had some cognitive or memory issues for a while.
Double concussion.
Yeah. And do you think you still have lingering effects of that, or?
I don't know. I know that it happened right after 9/11. I was taking Kaylee to Ralph's house. So she was just in middle school at the time, but she was going to go see I think Backstreet Boys or NSYNC. I don't remember which one. And and then what happened was that uh the road I was on, it didn't have a middle lane, so the car in front of me stopped to make a turn. So I had to put on my brakes. And a truck plowed into me and accordioned me. And God, Kaylee, for the first time, she chose to sit in a different spot. She was still in the back seat, but she was over, not behind me anymore. She was by the passenger side, and it's good because my seat collapsed all the way to I would have crushed her legs.
Wow.
So she was okay. But here's the thing: EJ and Natasha, they were in my honors freshman English at the time. And there was something about that year would happen to me. Um, I thought I was better. And then when all of these students, all these honors freshmen came back as my AP seniors 3 years later, I
Uh-huh.
didn't I didn't remember the names of any of them. I had to
Wow.
relearn their names. Oh, the other thing is for about a month or two, I couldn't remember Kaylee's name. I knew she was my daughter. I would say my daughter, but to bring back her name, I had to think of Marillion,
Wow.
and then the Marillion song, Kaylee, yeah. So wherever the part of my brain is that names were kept, that was messed up.
So I think the point of my story is that that song sitting targets might not be a comfortable song or a commercial song or a song that any record label would advise you to release, but it's honest.
Yes. There's a great line in there. He's about, he's arguing with his partner in the car, and he says, keep your eyes on the road up ahead. I don't seem to be able to use mine, to use
Wow.
my head. So
All right. You ready for my number two?
yes.
So I've always been impressed by this album. I've always respected it. I've always enjoyed it. But now I truly like it. I truly love it. My Life in the Bush of Ghosts, Brian Eno
Mm-hmm.
and David Byrne. Has some of the funkiest bass lines. Yeah, what was his name? Busta Jones, maybe? And you got this great, I don't know, it's so funky with the sound collages. I'm kind of a sucker for that. It was kind of early sampling. There's different opinions about how influential this album was, but I love all these pieces with the radio talk show hosts and the Egyptian singers and all these different found sources with this great keyboard, bass, and drum work. And this was the album that was recorded before the Talking Heads Remain in Light. And you can really hear the genesis. I think the fact that it was released after made it lose maybe just a touch of its steam, its contextual importance. I think if it had been released in 80, it would have it would have blown more minds, I think. But I actually love this album now. I actually enjoy, in other words, it used to be a little bit of, not, I don't want to say a chore, but it took some work to listen to, like a lot of avant-garde music does. But over time, it's actually now something that I really, really enjoy listening to. And the songs I'm going to pick, one of them, by the way, has been removed from Spotify and from my copy because I bought a remastered copy and I didn't realize that the song Koran had been eliminated out of to appease people who complained about using their material, which makes me wish I had kept my original, My Life in the Bush of Ghosts. I wish I had two copies of it. But anyway, my picks are, I don't want to talk too long. They are America is Waiting, which is one of those religious talk show. America is waiting for a sign of some kind of or another, whatever the lyrics are. I love that. The preacher. Well, it isn't a preacher. It's just a kind of a right winger on the radio. And then Regiment, which has that beautiful, that Mideastern. They don't do do re mi fa sol la ti do. They don't do the eight note range. They do these microtones or whatever you want to call them, notes between the notes. And her singing is just so wonderful. Hey, I read that she didn't even know that she was on this album until the 2010s.
Really?
Yeah. And then when she found out, she was like, well, that's interesting. So then she asked for a little bit more money and they gave it to her. And she wasn't mad. She was happy. Um, but yeah, for years, she had no idea. Anyway, America's Waiting Regiment, My Life in the Bush of Ghosts, a phenomenal album that I think was very influential.
That was another one of mine that I originally had on there, but it didn't make the cut. But the my favorite song from there is "Help Me Somebody," which
Ah,
is a radio, evangelist. He goes, "Help me somebody, help
yeah.
me." Um, so yeah, great album. I'm glad you put it on there. All right, my number two, Elvis Costello and the Attractions, Trust. Now, I said also there was his country music album, Almost Blue, which also was really good. But this is the album that followed up Get Happy. And it 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 had a different attitude to it because it wasn't a particular type style of music, but as you said, there was a how do you want to say it? There there was a production thing that was very different from the typical Nick Lowe production. Um, and it was cleaner and it was showing that Elvis was ready to move in a different direction, that he wasn't going to just keep doing the same album over and over again. And honestly, if not for Trust, then Imperial Bedroom would have been far more of a surprise. This is like the album that paved the way for the brilliant Imperial Bedroom. Um, and all of the songs are good. They're just, they're just not as like striking post-punk things. They're a little bit more honest rock. And the two songs that I would choose, just like you, I would choose New Lace Sleeves, but also Clubland. What was the one you chose?
From a Whisper to a Scream.
Yeah, that's great. So Clubland, New Lace Sleeves, are the two that I would choose.
Yeah, real quick, I read that you know how much I like Get Happy because I had that even higher on my list from earlier. I read something that explains things a little bit. It said Get Happy was that they were drinking and drugging like crazy on that album. And it is kind of a hyper high energy album. They were doing a lot of booze and cocaine and then taking sleeping pills at night and doing it again the next. They were just crazy. And yeah, Trust was a little different because there was tensions in the band, and I think they were partying a little bit less. And it doesn't have that hyper fuel kind of feel. It's a little more subdued. Combination of maybe less partying and maybe not being in quite as high spirits, whether it be induced or not induced. So, and I kind of feel that, don't you? You really get
Yes,
that.
absolutely.
Yeah. I never thought of Get Happy as a cocaine album alongside Rumors, Black Sabbath's albums, Bloody Sabbath. We were talking about that one, and maybe Station to Station, famous cocaine albums. But yeah, but I guess now that I read that, I can go back and listen to Get Happy and go, oh, okay, it's one of those albums. Okay, my number one is King Crimson, Discipline. Um, I've always liked this album from the very beginning. Um, and spoiler alert, when we talk about who we've seen in concert, I did see the Discipline tour at Grady Gamage, and it's seared in my brain. What a great band. Yeah, it's kind of math rock. It's kind of math rocky. This was when King Crimson reformed after years, and I like this. This is my favorite album, hands down, of the Blue era, of this particular lineup. They would go on to release Beat and Three of a Perfect Pair, and they're all great albums, but this is the one I love. So yeah, that prog rock, math rock kind of thing. This is very kind of mathy, I think. We talk about math rock is big now. And I think this was influential in that regard. My songs I'm picking are Elephant Talk, which I think is misunderstood. Some people don't like that song, but he's just going through the alphabet. I think a lot of people miss that. The first verse is all words that start with A. Argument, whatever.
Agreement.
Yeah, B, brouhaha. And he's going through these B words and then C words and D words. And then he does the E words, and that's the end of the song. So there's 5 verses. And he might as well just, I think he calls it elephant talk because that's how that guitar sounds. So he's just commenting on his guitar. But but the idea is you could go through the whole alphabet. You could have 26 verses. Why not? I like that. It's there are so many. It's amazing how many words there are in the English language for talking. It's amazing. He comes up with dozens just in this song. So yeah, I love it. And then my other choice I'm going to pick is Indiscipline. But you could just throw a dart. I mean, this is perfect album. I love all of these songs. King Crimson, Discipline. And by the way, this is the #1 album on Rate Your Music. So I happen to be in concurrence with them, which is kind of a little unusual. I sometimes really disagree with Rate Your Music, but we're on the same page for 1981.
Speaking of being on the same page, guess what my number one is?
King Crimson?
Yeah, King Crimson Discipline, and it's cool because I have two different songs, so we get to have four songs,
Oh, great.
by King Crimson. But this was a case of Fripp had no intention of reforming King Crimson, but he brought in Bill Bruford, who was in King Crimson, and Tony Levin, and Adrian Belew, and he said that as he listened to the music they were making, he said you couldn't call it anything except King Crimson. There is that math aspect to it, and there's a real variety. So the two songs that I chose were Frame by Frame, which is a
Yeah.
soaring. You can almost imagine John Wetton singing that from the 1974 King Crimson. Frame by Frame, Death by Drowning, and then a beautiful, beautiful, heartfelt ballad, Mate Kudasai. So with the two that you chose and these two, it's very well represented.
Those are great picks. I think frame by frame, if you were going to make a case or an argument of whether or not Adrian Belew is a good singer, I would pick frame by frame, not the two songs that I picked. Frame by frame, that's actually really good singing. Better than Elephant Talk. I think it's beautiful vocal, don't you?
Yes, absolutely. Um, Adrian Belew is a really interesting vocalist. He can do a lot of different styles. And the first time I ever heard him doing from his own album, the song that he co-wrote with David Bowie, um,
Pretty Pink Rose?
Pink Road, Rose, they switch off verses. And it was like, wait, this is it's the same person, but it's not. He could sing like Bowie. On Pretty Pink Rose, and he did that in concert with Bowie too. And then he loved Bowie. I saw him on that Bowie tribute. He was on that, and he did a lot of Bowie songs. As a matter of fact, they did Pretty Pink Rose as well. Um,
Okay.
And I should also point out that he could do one of the best Bob Dylan impressions ever. Just
That's
listen
right.
to Flakes on Frank Zappa's Flakes. I asked as nice as I could if my car would somehow be finished by Friday.
Flakes. California's got a host of them. I swear they got the most of them. I love that song. Yeah, so Blue played with Frank Zappa. We saw him in 78 with Bowie. And
Mhm.
so we knew right away he was a chameleon. And was it you or my friend Stan? We had tickets to see Adrian Blue at Dooley's, and the show was canceled.
Oh no, it must have been with Stan. You know,
Yeah, and
he's from Tulsa originally.
really?
Yeah, yeah.
I didn't know that.
Bowie still.
You know what show I wish had not been canceled? We had tickets for Marillion with Fish.
Oh, yes, I know that. I, I'll always regret that when the first Marillion album came out.
I really wish I'd seen that show. Oh, well, okay, what could have been? All right, so I'm going to go through my honorable mentions. And I just want to say before, real quick, that if I could take my favorite half of Phil Collins' Face Value and my favorite half of Genesis Abacab and mush them together into one album, it would have made my top 10 or honorable mentions. Just right off the bat, they open with the songs In the Air Tonight and Abacab, which are great songs, two of my favorites, and No Reply at All. And like you said, Dodo Lurker. So I do want to just shout out those two albums, but I think that when Collins saved some of his songs, or as we've read, sometimes Banks and Rutherford didn't like the song or didn't think it was appropriate. So I just feel like those two artists kind of split, kind of divided it down the middle, and it kind of watered each album down just a little bit. But yeah, if I could make my own single disc from those two albums, it'd be there. But instead, I have Tin Drum by Japan.
Hmm.
Almost made almost made my top 10. It's at number 11. If I were counting, it'd be my first honorable mention. And I think I bumped it for Rocky Erickson, but I love the song Ghosts. That's one of my favorite song. It's my favorite Japan song and one of my favorite songs, period. Uh, I like the whole album, but I feel like that song is just at a whole nother level. And it has this kind of strange repeating pattern where the song keeps breaking down and then renewing itself. I don't know how to describe it because I'm not a musician, but there's a very unique structure to that song, and I love it. All right, next honorable mention, Ricky Lee Jones, Pirates, my favorite album by her. Uh, Living It Up and the title track. It's really well done album. I think it's her best. It's a sophomore album, so no sophomore slump here. And yeah, I'm a big Ricky Lee Jones fan. I have her two disc anthology and a number of other albums of hers. Much later in the 21st century, she would do an album called The Sermon on Exposition Boulevard, which is phenomenal. But this is still probably my favorite or tied for my favorite. All right, next is The Pretenders. And it hurt not to put this in my top 10, but I do think there's a little bit of a sophomore slump. Uh, it's got great stuff on it. Message of Love, Talk of the Town, produced by Chris Thomas again. Great album, but there's that kind of salaciousness that she does. The veins bulged on his neck. she just does this stuff. I think she's just trying to be a provocateur a little bit. The Adulteress is the opening track. And I'm not a prude at all, so this stuff doesn't bother me, but it feels just a tad unnecessary. Um, yeah, I don't know. It's just a slight step down from that wonderful debut. But Pretenders 2 is still a great, great album. Uh, Next is the Rolling Stones, Tattoo You. This was just thrown together from scraps. Chris Crimsey, I believe, who was engineering the album, went through their vaults and found some stuff. But way back when you and I were listening to music, we didn't have this. We didn't have Wikipedia. We didn't know this. We thought it was a new release of new songs. So now I read that a lot of the vocals, Mick was the only one in the studio, and he was just, he wrote some lyrics, recorded vocals over these old scraps. They brought in Sonny Rollins to do um, a couple sax solos, and it doesn't feel cobbled together, but it is. But it works. So the Rolling Stones, Tattoo You. Of course, the most famous song is Start Me Up. Yeah, Start Me Up was in the scrap heap. Yeah, it was just in the unreleased vaults, and they pulled that out, and yeah, now it's a concert staple. And my last honorable mention is an album. I've got this, I actually wrote this down. It's 448 on Rate Your Music. Yeah, 448th best album of the year. But I love it. And here's Steve Lillywhite again. Joan Armatrading, Walk Under Ladders. I think it's an underrated album. Yeah, it's not folky. It's not that acoustic thing. It's rock and roll with synthesizers and reggae and everything else. But I love Walk Under Ladders. So that's my last honorable mention.
Okay, my honorable mentions. Kind of an odd concept album by Todd Rundgren, Healing. The entire album is about healing. It was originally released with a 7-inch single with the song Time Heals. And which has been added on to the CD, and Little Demons, those two songs. But if I were to choose one song, it's Todd in full Marvin Gaye mode, Compassion.
Yeah.
I, it's such a great, beautiful Todd Rundgren soul song. The next, a little bit of a drop from the first album by U2. This is October. And I think the reason why is because um, the songs got stolen and Bono had to kind of recreate them. But it still has some great songs on it, including Gloria. Um, then an album that is on here mostly for one song, although the whole album is very enjoyable, and that is the Human League, Dare.
Uh,
And God, the song "Don't You Want Me" is just an earworm. And what's funny is that Human League, they they wanted some female vocalists and they found a couple fans and they added them to it. So, then they became, two female singers plus what's his name, the main singer. But you know, it's just Dare is a great album, and Don't You Want Me is a fantastic song. Garland Jeffries, Escape Artist. The Garland Jeffries, a West Indian singer who has a definite DNA connection musically to Elvis Costello, Graham Parker, people like that. And this album in particular, has that sort of feel. It has a dynamite version of Question Mark and the Mysterians, 96 Tears, but the song I would choose if there was just one would be Christine. And it's a up-tempo reggae track. And then the next one, I came home from work. This is when Cindy and I still worked second shift. Turned on the radio, I heard this amazing Fleetwood Mac song. I said, "What the hell?" I said, "I have all the Fleetwood Mac albums. What is this?" And it was Stevie Nicks, Edge of 17.
Uh,
Um, and I called the radio station to say, "What is this? What is it's clearly Stevie Nicks. What's the song?" They said, "Oh, it's from her first solo album, Belladonna." And Edge of 17. And by the way, there was a single released, which was like a 12-minute live version of it. But such a great song with Waddy Wachtel, doing that
right.
guitar on there, and that kind of makes the song. But just like a white-winged dove sings a song, sounds like you're singing, ooh, 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 good night, sweetie.
Is
So
that all
there we
five
go.
of them?
That's all five of them. Todd Rundgren, U2, Human League, Garland Jeffries, Stevie Nicks.
And on that Stevie Nicks Edge of 17, I like to think of that. I don't know about you, but I like to think of that as a Sonoran Desert song. So there are some mourning doves down here in Mexico, but not nearly as many. And I hear them only every once in a while. And every time I do, it's the only time I miss Arizona. I miss the mourning doves and the cactus. I like, I do miss the desert. And of course, my family and friends, but that song of the mourning dove, it takes me back. So yeah, when she sings that, it has kind of a special meaning for me. So this is the part where the professor and I like to talk about what concerts we've seen related to our lists. And I'm going to talk real quick about two that you mentioned that were not on my list. And I think you went with me to one of these shows. Did you go with me to Garland Jeffries?
No, I did not. I did not.
Okay, I don't know if you know that I saw that tour.
I remember now you mentioned it to me.
So that was interesting because I have seen Graham Parker twice, but I have never seen Graham Parker and the Rumor. But I have seen the Rumor and Garland Jeffries and the Rumor. It's a little confusing. The Rumor opened for Garland Jeffries and then stayed on stage and he came out. I mean, there was an intermission, but they came back out on and they were the band for Garland Jeffries. So that was at Dooley's. So I did see the Escape Artist tour, and yeah, that's great. Also, I went to see, my friend wanted to see the Jay Giles band on their Freeze Frame tour. And we went it was actually 1982, but this opening band was still touring their sophomore album, October. And U2 was the opening band for Jay Giles. A little bit of a mismatch. And I can tell you that I have described it today as a baptism. I have seen bands, I'm going to give you an example. I've seen the Red Hot Chili Peppers in 1985. I had no idea they were going to blow up and be big. I had no idea. I saw U2. I knew. I just knew that they were going places. So it's funny how you can see a band and not know that they're going to blow up. And other times you see somebody and you go, that's the future. And when I saw U2, I knew they were going somewhere. Um, I just felt it. But anyway, okay, so I digress. And I think you knew that I saw U2. Um, all right, so here's the concerts I've seen. King Crimson, I actually saw this tour, the Discipline Tour. I mentioned it earlier at Gamage Auditorium, which was designed by Frank Lloyd Wright, is acoustically perfect building, and they sounded great. Because in 1981, you didn't always get good sound. Sometimes you go to a show, wasn't good sound. I've seen Black Uhuru in concert, I believe 4 times, and Michael Rose solo 1 time. So Yeah, big fan, but I've seen him with Sly and Robbie 3 times. No, no, I'm sorry. Always with Sly and Robbie. So I've seen Sly and Robbie with Black Kahoo, I think 4 times. I've seen X 3 times, Elvis Costello 3 times, Tom Petty twice, Ricky Lee Jones once in the 21st century at the Musical Instrument Museum. She did a great cover of David Bowie's Rebel Rebel, believe it or not. I saw the Rolling Stones once. I've seen Joan Armatrading twice. And I want to brag about one concert I've seen, and I didn't know. I mean, nobody knew, but I actually saw the Pretenders 2 tour at Mesa Amphitheater with James Honeyman Scott and Pete Farden, not knowing that they were going to die. So I did get to see the original lineup of the Pretenders with Martin Chambers throwing his sticks into the crowd. And yeah, got good memories of that show. So that's it.
Okay, I've seen Bob Dylan, Genesis several times, Elton John several times, Rush a couple times, Peter Hamill, Elvis Costello a couple times, Todd Rundgren a couple times, U2, and never actually seen her in concert, but I had her flirt with me at a Todd Rundgren show, and that was
Yeah, I would go on to see Stevie Nicks in '83 at the US Festival, and Waddy Wachtel was there. So that was great. You know who her keyboard player was? Her piano player?
Roy Bittan.
Yeah. Yeah,
Yeah.
she got him to play, and yeah, it was pretty damn good. But well, I think collectively that's a lot of shows, a lot of bands that we've seen. We've done pretty good. So 1981, fun year. Like you said, odd year. Maybe that's a better word than weak year. Um,
Yeah.
because you had, like I mentioned, Phil Collins and Genesis both putting out albums and kind of the way they chose songs was so interesting because sometimes Genesis sounds like Phil. Sometimes Phil sounds like Genesis. Less so, but yeah. Well, this was fun. So hang on and we'll talk about our schedule because I know the holidays are coming up. So you want to say goodbye to everybody?
Bye.
And so Buen dia. We'll talk to you later.